Silence can be louder than shouting. There are moments when a room holds its breath, when power expects to be obeyed, and the law waits to see whether it will be tested. This is a story about one of those moments. It is about arrogance colliding with accountability. It is about money learning that it does not speak the final word. It is about a courtroom where someone believed respect could be purchased, and discovered too late that justice is not for sale. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this conversation is reaching. I have spent decades watching people walk into a courtroom carrying every excuse imaginable. Fear, anger, confidence, desperation. Some come in trembling, others come in defiant. Most learn very quickly that the law does not care who they think they are. But on one particular morning, a young man walked into my courtroom carrying something different. He carried certainty. The kind of certainty that only comes from a lifetime without consequences. He was 24 years old, perfect posture, tailored suit, the quiet arrogance of someone who had never been told no. His last name opened doors, his family wealth closed arguments, and he believed, with absolute conviction, that it would close this case too. He looked at me and spoke words that echoed through that courtroom long after he finished speaking. He did not plead. He did not apologize. He did not even pretend to respect the process. He told me to name my price. In all my years on the bench, I had never heard that sentence spoken out loud. Not so directly, not so casually, not with such confidence that the system itself would bend. The room went still. You could feel it. Everyone understood that a line had just been crossed. What that young man did not understand was that he had just started a lesson that would dismantle everything he thought he was protected by. His name was Preston Montgomery IV. He was the heir to a hotel empire that spanned states and generations. His father and grandfather had built wealth measured in billions. He had inherited the benefits without learning the responsibilities. And now he stood before the law, convinced that his inheritance made him untouchable. The charge that brought him into my courtroom was not minor. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not an accident. It was a violent assault. The night it began was an ordinary summer evening for most people. For one working man, it would become a dividing line between the life he had known and the life he would be forced to rebuild. Marcus Thompson was doing what he had done for years. He showed up. He worked long hours. He provided for his children. There was nothing glamorous about his job, but there was dignity in it. Marcus was a veteran. He had served his country overseas while still barely an adult himself. He had returned home carrying memories he did not talk about and responsibilities he never abandoned. After his wife passed away, he worked harder. Not for praise, not for recognition, but because two young daughters depended on him to be steady when everything else had fallen apart. On that night, Marcus was assigned to valet duty at a luxury hotel. Cars came and went, guests laughed, music drifted from above. Then Preston arrived. The vehicle was expensive, bright, impossible to miss. It drew attention the way money often does. Marcus did his job the way he always did, carefully, professionally, respectfully. When Preston returned later that night, his mood had changed. His words were sharper, his patience thinner, and he was looking for something to be wrong. He claimed there was damage. He demanded someone be blamed. He dismissed explanations. He rejected process. And then, without warning, he turned his anger into violence. What followed was not a dispute. It was not mutual. It was not justified. It was an attack. Witnesses froze. Security footage recorded what human instinct struggled to comprehend. A man doing his job was harmed because another man believed his property mattered more than a life. When it ended, Marcus was taken away for medical treatment. Preston walked away believing the matter would disappear. It did not. Medical professionals documented injuries consistent with a serious assault. Investigators reviewed evidence. Charges were filed. And then something else happened that revealed even more about the character of the people involved. Attempts were made to erase what occurred. Video files were targeted. Silence was encouraged. But truth has a way of surviving. One person chose conscience over comfort. Evidence was preserved. The facts could no longer be denied. When Marcus lay recovering, representatives arrived with apologies wrapped in numbers. The offers grew larger. The language grew smoother. All Marcus had to do was sign away the truth. He refused. Why would a man in pain, facing debt and uncertainty, turn down life-changing money? Because his daughters were watching. Because he understood that what he taught them in that moment would last longer than any check. When those attempts failed, the case moved forward. By the time Preston Montgomery stood before me, the evidence was overwhelming. The facts were clear. The harm was undeniable. And yet, he behaved as though this was an inconvenience rather than a reckoning. He interrupted testimony. He dismissed suffering. He treated the courtroom like a stage where his confidence alone would carry him through. When Marcus testified, he did not perform. He spoke plainly. He spoke honestly. He talked about pain, about recovery, about fear in his children's eyes. And while he spoke, the man who caused it all showed boredom. That moment told me everything I needed to know. Not remorse, not reflection, just entitlement. When the verdict came back, it was unanimous, guilty on all counts. Then came sentencing. This is the moment when many people finally understand what they have done. This is when apologies often surface. This is when humility sometimes appears. That is not what happened. Preston stood and reminded everyone who his family was. He spoke of influence, of donations, of power. He belittled the court. He dismissed the law. He suggested money would clean up whatever remained. And then he called me nothing. That word hung in the air, heavy and exposed. What he did not realize was that he was not insulting me. He was revealing himself. I let the silence stretch. Because sometimes silence is the only response arrogance cannot control. Then I spoke. I spoke about years on the bench. About seeing people with nothing face consequences with more dignity than those with everything. About the difference between wealth and worth. I spoke about choices. About moments where a person decides who they are going to be. And then I sentenced him. The sentence was lawful. It was deliberate. It was proportionate. Prison time. Restitution. No special treatment. No shortcuts. But the consequences did not stop there. During the review of this case, something else came to light. A clause buried deep within corporate documents. A safeguard written decades earlier to protect a business from scandal. A clause that activated when violence and public disgrace intersected. The implications were immediate. Leadership would change. Control would shift. A legacy would unravel. In that moment, the realization hit Preston harder than any sentence I could pronounce. Not because of prison, but because for the first time, his actions had reached beyond himself. He pleaded then, not for Marcus, not for justice, but for his father. And that was the cruelest irony of all. Because the lesson he was learning was one his family had delayed teaching for too long. That money can shield, but it cannot erase. That power can delay, but it cannot deny forever. That character is not inherited. It is built. Marcus received restitution, but he did not retreat from life. He healed. He worked. He rebuilt. He chose a path that helped others like him. He created stability for his children. He showed them that standing firm matters. Preston served his time. He lost what he believed defined him. And whether change followed remains a question only his future can answer. But the courtroom that day did what it was meant to do. It affirmed something fundamental. That the law is not impressed by names. That dignity is not determined by income. That no one gets to decide another person is worthless. This story is not about revenge. It is about balance. It is about reminding those with power that it comes with responsibility. And it is about reminding those without it that they still matter. If this story challenged you, moved you, or reminded you why accountability matters, subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with us for more stories that prove justice still has a voice.